Well, good morning to you. If you're like me, you have dreams. If you're like me, you want stuff. If you're like me, you have these lingering dreams, these things that you're thinking about maybe for years. If only you had the time. If only you had the money. If only you had the guts. I'm like that. 15 years ago I quit my job to become a writer. And everybody thought I was completely insane. Because I had a great job and made a lot of money, which is very important in Holland, to make a lot of money. More important to be happy. I had a great house. I had a girlfriend. But I quit my job. And for my job I traveled all around the world, to Cannes, to LA, and I missed that. I still miss that. But you know, I wanted to become a writer. It was important to me. So I quit my job, I sold my house, I already lost my girlfriend. And I started writing in Rotterdam. I rented a small apartment, very old, very, very dirty. I know I entered the apartment, and in the middle of the apartment was dog shit. So it was kind of a transition from where I lived to where I went. But I did what I said I was going to do, right. So I wrote 1,000 words a day, which is about 1.5 pages a day. And at the end of the year, I wrote for a year, I had a book called Dreamer of Worlds. It was a children's book, and I thought it was pretty good. So I sent it to one of the major publishers in Holland. And after a couple of weeks I got it back. And he read about 60 pages of the 340. And when I print in black. But those 60 pages were red, all over. And there was a very nice letter accompanying the manuscript. And it said in very nice words that it was a really, really bad written book. It was awful. I didn't know shit about writing a book. So that was it. I was out of money. So I was out of time. So I was looking for a job again, and I started quite a lot lower in the chain than when I left my former job. And I thought, you know, I tried. I just can't do it. I'm not a writer. I'm a bad writer. It says it in the letter. It says I'm a bad writer. And I think it took me maybe 2 months when I reread the letter that I realized that it never said I was a bad writer. That's what I made of it, but it didn't say it. It said the book wasn't good. It didn't say that I wasn't good. But that's what we do. What we do is we say we are our projects. If what we do it doesn't work out, we don't work out. We failed. But it wasn't true. When I reread the letter, it said, try something smaller, learn how to write. So that's what I did. And I did it in the evenings, and I did it in the weekends, and I did it during the holidays, which was possible because I didn't have kids yet. And I started to write, and after a year, a very small book came out by a different publisher. And it did okay. And they asked me to write another book. And it did okay. And they asked me to write another book. And now 15 years later I have 44 books. I have a national best-selling trilogy who is being translated into German right now. It's coming out in Germany next year. And I'm a writer. And the thing is, I never thought of it as an insane plan. Other people thought it was insane what I was doing. But I was just trying stuff out. And there were other things that I thought were insane. It was just the fun projects. I opened a store here in Utrecht, and this was last century. Yes, it was 1996, I think. The then biggest CD-ROM game shop in the Netherlands. And the bank and the Chamber of Commerce said to me that it would take a year to create this and get the money for the shop, and I did it in 3 months, which they said was completely impossible. We broke the record movie watching, the world record movie watching, the Guinness record. It was then 69 hours, so we watched movies. I organized the event for 72 hours in a row with no sleep. And it got in the newspapers and on national television. And 1 week later, the Germans broke the record with 2 minutes. I don't know anything about soccer, but Germany and 2 minutes is supposed to be a thing. But the most insane thing I ever did was organizing an event, a party for my family. Not because it was very difficult to organize. I've organized much bigger things, but you know, I hadn't seen most of my family for 20 years. I only saw my parents and my sister, and when I was, I think 14, I decided that I don't need my family. So I didn't go to birthdays or whatever my family went to. So I didn't see my aunts and nephews and nieces for over 20 years. And then I got older, and I got married, I got kids, and I thought, no, that's weird. It's weird that I don't know my family. So I thought I'm going to organize a party, which was scary as hell. Because every time I picked up the phone to call an aunt or an uncle and say, do you want to come to my party? I was expecting them to say, who the hell do you think you are? We haven't heard from you in 20 years. And of course I'm not going to your party. Who do you think you are? What do you think they said? Wow, what a great idea. Thank you for inviting me. And they all came. There was one person who said, no, I'm not going to come. And that was my dad. And I have a great relationship with my dad. But he said, no, I'm not going to come to the party. I said, why not? He said, because you invited my brother.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't spoken to my brother in 7 years. So if he's coming, I'm not coming. So you have to uninvite him. I could not uninvite him. It would lack every integrity I have. So I did the only thing I could do, and I said to my father, I'm sorry. It's a pity that you're not coming. So he hung up, and I think it took a week. Then he called me really chippy. I'm coming to your party! I'm like, oh, okay, what happened? I called my brother. He said, what? I called my brother, and you know, and I cannot say this without crying. He said, we didn't know what the fight was about anymore. We didn't remember. We only remembered that we hadn't spoken to each other for 7 years, but we didn't know why. So they both came, and they're still seeing each other. My father had his 76th birthday last week, and he was there, his brother. And that's when I realized that what I call insane plans, you think that they are about you. They hardly ever are. Even if it starts because it's something that you really want, most of the time it has an impact on your community and the world. It can be a small impact, although my father and his brother be communicating with each other again, it's not small for me. But it's not like a world impact. But there is stuff that is a world impact. My books are not about me. They're about children reading and getting stories in their head. So, insane plans. What are they? They inspire. They have to inspire you somewhere or somewhat, because otherwise, why would you do this? You don't have time, you don't have money, so there must be something that inspires you. But at the same time, they're bloody scary. Because if they're not scary, you would have done them already. So it's somewhere between inspiring and scary. You know the dreams. One day I will run the marathon of New York. This is the part where I do this a couple of times a month. I always say, not me, but I started running 2 weeks ago, so maybe one day. Or one day I write a book, or one day I start my own company, or one day I'm going to change the world. And I know you have dreams, because this is why you're here with this enormous number of people. And you're going to share them to each other right now. And you all got 1 minute each. And we have this great thing which rings after a minute, so you know that you have to switch. So you now can turn to your neighbor. And if you're with 3, you just figure something out because you're all grown-ups. and after a minute it rings, and then you switch, and the other one tells his or her dreams, and then you come back to me, and time starts now. One or 2 persons sharing for the group what their insane plan is. Who? Please raise your hand if you want to say something. 1 or 2 sentences, okay? Yes, please. Can you stand up, please?
Thank you, because when you asked the question, I immediately knew, and I don't want to tell anyone, so thanks. I am also a writer.
Yes.
My second book is coming out in a month's time, and in September I am start studying to become an illustrator. And my big plan, my dream, is that you have singer-songwriters. I'd like to be a writer-illustrator.
Great.
Thanks for hearing me out.
Great. Okay, someone else. Yeah. Someone else. Please raise your hands if you want to share what your insane plan is. Yes, sir. Can you raise stand up, please?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. This is how it starts.
I wrote a couple of songs in Dutch, and I did it from own experience, and I made them implicit.
Yeah.
And I really want to share those songs with other people, because I've seen people getting inspired or getting touched by them, and I want to incorporate that into a theater play.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Sounds great. I want to come. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, one more. Yes, in the back. Do you agree with that?
Sure.
Okay.
He's on his way already. He says the legal
typical notices you get with medication.
Yeah.
They're hard to read.
They're hard to read.
And he says, well, why not make it into a moving comic? Animation
Okay.
style comic. He's been working on it for years, and it's a nightmare, but he's still pursuing it. So, plus.
Great. So a comic which explains the side effects of medicine. That's great. Wow, thank you. And you really wanted to share?
Yes.
Please stand up.
I'm terrified, but I try to share. I really want to write a book, and I feel like, okay, this is my first time to say it aloud. This means I need to commit to it also.
Yes. Thank you. Well, it's good that you say I'm terrified, because that's, you know, what we are. We're terrified of doing this stuff. We're terrified of what people think of us. We're terrified of failure. I call this always fears. This is always nagging fear of not doing it right, not being able to do it. And when we started, I was really fearful, because this is in English and I've never done this presentation in English. So I was fearful. And then, you know, we talked and you know, just do it and make mistakes. Yeah, but
you haven't made one!
So, well, the biggest fear we say, the biggest thing why we don't do what we do is that we don't have time. But the thing is, when I wrote my first book, I took a year off. When I wrote the other books, I didn't. I wrote them in between. You know, whenever time was available. I always have to laugh when people say, he has much more time than I have. No. There's 24 hours in a day everywhere in the world. We all have 24 hours. And it's up to you how you spend it. And there's this cheesy book, which made into an even more cheesy film. But they say, what if every morning you get, and I don't know the exact amount, but I think it's something about 86,000 euros in the bank. And you have to spend it every day. Because at the end of the day, it will be gone. What would you buy? Well, now change the euros in seconds, and that's your day. That's your bank. Well, we have no money. Well, newsflash for you. Everybody I interviewed for my book Insane Plans, who did really insane stuff, didn't have any money. Nobody. They didn't have time, they didn't have money, and they did it anyway. There were people with money who had a harder time getting their stuff done than the people without money. Because if you don't have money, people will help you. And if you have money, they will charge you. But the most important fear, the most prevalent fear is, it's not possible. And when we say it's not possible, we mean, I can do it. Because you know that everybody else you know will probably be able to do it, but not you, not yourself. But the thing is, most of the things that you come up with are already done. There are people who have written books. Newsflash. There are. Okay, maybe there isn't anyone who translated all that medical stuff into comics, which I really think is a brilliant idea, and you know it's going to be on an international website in a week. But there have been comics. So it's not that you are inventing the comic. You're inventing a new way of translating something into a comic, but it's not new. And there are singer-songwriters. And there are even writer-illustrators. I know a few of them. So, I'm going to give you one secret, because this is the small version of my lecture. So I'm going to give you one secret today. And this is a very important one. It's called reverse engineering. You know, in software and in hardware, when you want to steal someone's product and you don't know how they made it, then what they do is they're going from the finished product, then going backwards to find out, okay, if it does this, then it probably has to do this, this or this to get there. So you work backwards to find out how something works. And that's a great way to find out how your plan is going to work. And what you do is you imagine that it already happened. Like what I always do when I start a new book, is I imagine being in New York on a television show with Jay Leno or something, and you know, the next day I'm in this big Hollywood, New York bookstore, rows of people, and I'm signing and signing and signing. You know, in reality I've never been in New York. But it doesn't matter, because what I do is I try to imagine how the book looks like. What's on the cover? What does it say on the back? How are people going to respond to the book? It helps me visualize the book, and I'm going to go backwards. Who published it? What kind of people bought it? You can do this with your plan. Well, if you think it's a little abstract, these guys do this all the time. They're called them mythbusters. Who don't know them, they bust myths. You know, and they do this by reverse engineering. You have a myth coming up, like if you pee on the third rail of a train, then you get electrocuted through your pee. Yes, they actually found out if it works. So they're going to go backwards and say, okay, how much beer do you have to drink to have a continuous stream of pee? And how much fault is there on a third rail? And then they figure that out. And that's stuff we can do too. So I want you all to close your eyes now. I accept you because you're filming. Close your eyes and think for a minute. Yesterday, your plan was finished. Your book is in the store. Your theater show with all your songs played, and the premiere was last night. You wrote and illustrated the book. People all over the world are finally getting what kind of medicine they're taking, because they get reading the comic. Try to imagine that yesterday everything was exactly as you planned. Now try to think, what was the last thing you did? What was the cherry on the cake? The last thing you did when you said, okay, now this is it. It's finished. I'm done. And what was the second last thing you did? It's something very special happening here. Okay, please open your eyes and share with your neighbor, a minute each, what you just experienced. Time starts now. to share what just happened? Raise your hand if you want to share what just happened. No? Yes?
I was at the table with Marcel van Driel in a very famous dinner.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Talking about your plan.
Talking about my plan and releasing everyone, and then next day everything would roll out easy.
Okay, great, thank you. Someone else? Nienke.
Well, I was at a large convention center in Denver where I was speaking for a large crowd of international CEOs, which I was inspiring about customer experience. And what I had to do, one of the actions was to get in contact with international bookers to enhance my international speaking practice. But they were clapping and cheering.
Okay, one more? No? Okay. We all know about milestones, you know? How to create, if you're planning, you know, planning helps. And I'm someone who never planned. You can over-plan, but some planning is good. You know a little bit of what you have to do when and by when. But what we have learned in school is you start at the beginning and then you plan ahead, which, you know, works fine. But it's not the only way, because this is very linear. What you also can do is go backwards, because you're already inventing a future for yourself where your plan already happened. So if you do that already and you go back, then you can create milestones from back to front. The fun thing is it creates different milestones. Most of the time more inspiring milestones. Like if you go from front to back, you have to, I really have to do this to get there. If you go back to front, it's like, oh, but it's really fun because I know where I'm going to end. Really works. Another thing that works is, by the way, is mind mapping, where you just throw everything at the table and see what sticks. And then you have 3 possible outcomes of your plan. You succeed, you fail, or this one is more popular than the other 2. And I always have to think of a joke that I found very funny when I was 6, of these 2 guys who were swimming the canal, and then in front, like a kilometer in front of the end, they say, I can't do this, I go back. And when you're 6, that's hilarious. But I always think of people who saying, you know, I tried and I quit halfway. I always think, halfway? How did you know you were halfway? How did you know you weren't almost there? This looks like, yeah, sure, have fun. You know, working hard on insane plans isn't fun all the time. I know, you know. I have to write 1,000 words each day. Also today. I have to go home after this and I have to go write 1,000 words. Which I'm probably not very inspired to. But the thing is, if you can choose to have fun with your project, even if you fail. Like you imagined that you were successful a couple of minutes ago. But what if you imagine that you aren't? That you did this project for, I don't know, half a year, and then you failed. And then try to come up with a reason. Was it still fun to do if I fail? And I think most projects are still fun to do when you fail. I know that most projects I did, the outcome was the least important part of the thing. So have fun failing. And I want to close with something a hero of my new game has said. It's a bee dandelion, and you know, and dandelion you blow against it, and all the seeds are go everywhere, and there are new flowers coming up. But you don't know from which seed a flower comes. Some end up in the water or on the road, and some end up in grass and, you know, grow new dandelions. But you don't know which seed is going to be a flower. So if you try stuff and something doesn't work, don't say, I tried, it didn't work. Because, you know, it was one seed. You don't know which one will succeed. So try different things. You know, in the medical world, they say they have a 90% failure rate. If they want to invent a new medicine, they have a 90% failure rate. And they know this. And I spoke to someone in big pharmacy, and he said, you know, in reality it's 99%, but you don't dare to say it. They know they have to fail 99 times out of 100 to get that one medicine that works. Sometimes people work for 20 years on a medicine, so the one that comes after her is going to create the medicine that actually works. My name is Marcel van Driel. I'm on Twitter at Marcel van Driel. I'm on Facebook, and you can email me. I've written 2 books in Dutch about the subjects. You can buy them in the back, and I will sign them happily for you. Thank you for your time.